what I wanted to know was that it's been a while that you did your last startup, right? And I wanted to get your perspective on why is this the right time for you to kind of venture out again, take more risks? What made you think that now I should go ahead, so that people who are also thinking for themselves whether or not should they pursue entrepreneurship, is this a good time or should they wait? I want to help them make this decision for themselves so that they don't regret not jumping in it too early or too late either.
Okay. Well, I mean, the answer to that is, of course, different for everybody. But I'll share with you, my motivation. So it started happening when I think I crossed about 40 years of age, and was working as a CXO at Times Internet, part of the Times of India group, large company, cushy job, right? And for the past few years, as I said, I had played safe. After Route Guru in 2006 to 2010 was Route Guru, and since then till 2020, you can say about 10 years I had played safe, right? And now it had started to hit, is that what's the legacy I will be creating, right? And Times Internet is a great platform, or whichever company that anybody is working with is a great platform. But I think, to create a legacy, one needs to sometimes venture out. So this started happening as a thought process then, right? I wasn't clear what it would be. What I was clear about is that I want to do something in the space of startups and technology ventures. When I say startups, starting from very early stage to growth stage and late stage, but technology ventures which are path breaking. Do something for them uniquely, structurally, uniquely, using technology that changes changes their life, makes them more successful, increases the probability and extent of their success. That I was clear. So it started with experiments in the VC industry. Should I raise a fund and start capital, using capital and advisory to help them. That's when I kind of worked with Dexter Capital as a partner, Dexter Capital Advisors and Investment Bank as a partner, and some of these insights led to then creating Venex.
Wow, perfect. So it's good to learn about the things that have shaped you. And now that we're here, I would like to delve into Venex deeper. I want to understand, a bit more in detail. Who is Venex for? What problem does it solve? And how does it uniquely solve that problem which previous alternative systems or the current systems have not been able to solve effectively? So let's understand this in more depth and detail now.
Sure. So Venex is essentially for high growth or high potential ventures, and that that means high tech ventures. Because technology enables high growth and high potential. So so it is essentially for tech enabled or tech forward ventures which are either growing fast or have a great potential to disrupt a particular market or a particular industry and grow fast. Right now, when it comes to starting a venture, a lot of innovation has happened in the process of starting a venture. It has become very easy now, or comparatively a lot easier compared to Route Guru times, to start a venture, right? But when it comes to scaling an innovation, scaling a venture, journey is still very, very tough, right? So so that's where I think that's our key target market, I would say. I mean, the market that we are serving is ventures which have kind of done the 0 to 1 journey, right? They have a product market fitment, and after that they could be at any stage, and Venex is relevant for them.
Got it. So let's understand that what exactly is the problem here. What is this employee mindset that we're talking, and how does that lead to challenges for the growth of a business?
All right. So, like I'll share a personal experience. Okay. In one of the earlier ventures I worked with, in my early days in the startup ecosystem, I always carried the owner mindset. I always worked, understood, and in small teams, by the way, this happens naturally, right?
Yeah.
Where you are able to work with founders very closely, you understand them, and you work with the owner's hat, right? And it created success, but it created success to a certain extent, and that success became larger after I exited that particular venture, right? And I was not necessarily rewarded for that success. And this was not any fault of the founders. It's just that the models that existed for rewarding people from future success of the venture, or that exist even today, are not necessarily the right models. And I'll explain why later. But it was because of those problems with equity-based models that they were not able to share their future wealth creation that happened with me, even if they wanted to, right? So, and likewise, for example, investors who invested in Route Guru, right, invested in me. And if I created success later, there is no financial model today for me to reward them because of their investment in me, right? That's the personal experience about the lack of a structure for sharing future wealth with people who contribute to creating that wealth or creating that future.
So you're saying the equity, even if someone holds equity, whether due to investing in a startup or by investing their labor and receiving equity in the form of ESOPs, right? The problem with that approach is that you're saying the liquidity is unforeseen. Like you can't predict the liquidity of that, and hence the rewarding is not sufficient enough. Is that the core problem here?
Yes, that's the core problem. The other core problem is that many early stage ventures, are not able to set up an ESOP structure. It's complex to do it. It requires a policy, requires a legal framework. There are rigid regulations around it, and they end up making promises to employees about stock options, but those promises are not met because of these issues. So that also becomes a structure. And founders also don't understand this when they make the promise, that whether they will be able to meet those promises or not. For example, an employee joins, you don't have an ESOP policy right now. You say you will give stock options, but it takes you 2 years to just form a policy, okay, and get started. And the vesting cannot be predated. That's as per the regulation. The vesting has to start only from. So for 2 years of effort that the person put in, right, he feels a loss of trust and loss of he feels there's a breach of trust, because for 2 years there is no vesting happening, right?
Absolutely.
And even the employee doesn't understand why that's not happening, and even if they understand, it's a loss to them, right? So that's one issue, right? The other big issue is unpredictability on both value and timeline. The employee doesn't know exactly when the value will be realized in cash and how much value can be realized in cash, right? And that unpredictability combined with premature taxation at the time of exercise of those options to convert them into shares is another issue. There are solutions to the taxation problem, but the unpredictability remains with all those solutions, right? Largely, but what the insight that we received in our journey is that the business model of an employee is not a high risk business model. Unlike VCs or financial investors, for whom equity is a great solution because they hedge their risk by investing into tens or hundreds of ventures, right? And their business model allows for that, for high chances of failure, right? Only if 10% of their ventures succeed, they make a good IRR for their LPs, right? But an employee is dedicating a few years of their life to a particular venture, and if he or she is wearing the owner mindset, the risk there is too significant for their business model. And we've experienced this as employees and as employers as well. And that's why we decided to. We thought that there has to be a solution to this. Equity is definitely not working at scale. It's happening for a few ventures which are succeeding very much. But what about all the other ventures where success is mid-scale, right? And they're doing well, they're growing, they're profitable, but they haven't got an exit. So what about
Got
employees
it.
who?
So I think from this, I understand the insight, what you mentioned. I think that is very profound here, where you've looked at the employee's business model in that sense, right? They're not in the business of risk.
Absolutely.
Typically, I think the understanding that founders I from what I've spoken is that an employee is getting a regular monthly pay, and they're technically not taking any risk if all their reward is through the monthly pay. But when some of the reward is promised in the future in the form of either equity, ESOPs, or even in the form of bonuses at the very least, right? That's when the question of business model starts arising. If the employee was probably paid the market value or in proportion to the value that they've created, this problem would not exist, right? But that's not how it usually happens. So you want to solve it for both employees as well as employers, essentially to say that, there are other models you should consider, which are fair to both of you and which keeps both of you, rightly incentivized. Right. So let's understand then what is the alternative that you're proposing, and how is it different from ESOPs, and how is it different from bonuses?
Got it. Sure. So see, the issue with equity we saw, right? Unpredictability and lack of knowledge, and for both founders as well as employees, right? Especially young talent. The issue with cash, right, is also that cash promotes. I mean, if the employee is paid all in cash, right, then it becomes very transactional, because all cash bonuses which are structured today as variable pay, performance-based pay, etc., are paid at the end of each performance period, be it month, quarter, or year, right? So they get paid out. So that becomes a commodity and becomes transactional. It's great for driving short-term performance. It's a great tool for driving short-term performance, but it doesn't align the employee to slightly mid-term objectives of the company next 2 to 4 years, let alone longer term, right? Even if a venture has raised a lot of capital, then also cash is not the solution, because even if you pay somebody very high to recruit them, they can very easily take up another offer at more cash if cash was what they valued more, right? So so cash is definitely not the solution. Equity is also not the solution fully, right? At scale for all employees, it's perhaps a great solution. Equity is a great solution for maybe founders, co-founders, maybe some senior leaders, but not for all employees, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
So if cash and equity are not a solution, we looked at the potential of royalty or revenue share, right? Because if somebody is helping me create my future, can I give them a share of that future success as a share of future revenue or profits or future rounds of funding?
Got it. Okay.
When we looked at royalty, we saw huge potential in that, but we could not find any solution to structure it. We could not find any solution that structures it and automates that process, because how do you decide royalty for somebody in terms of the percentage of revenue, for example, and the period for which you pay them that royalty? So
if there's no automation for it, there must be examples. For example, I've seen in Shark Tank US that sharks sometimes crack these deals where they say, pay me this much 5 cents of royalty per sale until the next 5 years, and then 1 cent for forever, kind of that. So there must be people who must have implemented it with their own structure, with their own lawyers. That must be there, right? There must be a practice around it.
True. I mean, of course, royalty does exist, but there is no solution that has structured it for a company, for all their employees, in terms of deciding these decisions that you mentioned right now, even in Shark Tank US, perhaps, are ad hoc decisions.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is, let's say suppose an employee has worked with us for 2 years and done well, performed well. Shall we give them royalty for next, for the entire lifetime, forever? Perhaps not. Shall we give them royalty then for 2 years, next 2 years after their employment, or next 4 years, next 3 years is anybody's guess, right? And what percentage of royalty? How do we decide that at the time of joining, when the employee is joining, or later, right? These are challenges that are there with royalty, and that's why royalty also hasn't scaled today, because nobody has created this automation and this structure behind it. And that's exactly what we have been able to do is, what we do is we use a concept of wealth points, okay, which is like an internal fixed value currency that we created, internal for that company, right? And the company is able to, company is already measuring each person's contributions in terms of time, in terms of performance, right? Whether the measurement is advanced or or basic, but every company is measuring that and using that measurement to actually reward people with pay hikes or with variable pay components and stuff like that, right? So that system is there.
That's happening.
Whether basic or advanced, depending upon the stage of that venture or maturity of that business, right? What we do is we take that input from the company, which is pay packages input, pay packages and bonuses, the current pay packages, the bonuses, and the benchmark pay packages in the industry, in their industry. We take that from the venture, from the business, and then the platform is able to allocate or enable the company to allocate wealth points to each employee. Okay, and these wealth points can be allocated on a monthly basis, like a component of salary, right? Very similar to monthly vesting of stock options.
Correct.
And also these wealth points can be given as a performance reward. So variable wealth points, for example, very similar to variable cash, right? And that wealth point balance that an employee builds enables us, or enables the Venex platform, to limit the period of payout of the royalty, and also enables the platform to decide the percentage of revenue share or funding share to allocate for that employee. So that quantum, which is dynamic, the employee can keep building it. So now the employee knows that the longer I work with the company, the more wealth I will create through wealth points. The better I perform with the company, I will get more wealth points, as in more wealth. But I will realize that wealth based on the pace of growth of the business. So the realization, which means the cash payout, I know that quantum I will receive. So we have removed the unpredictability on that. The value is now fixed, right? For all my past performances, I know exactly how much wealth I will receive from future cash flows of the company.
Got it.
And the actual receipt of those, the actual accrual and payouts, is linked to the company's actual revenue or funding milestones, right? So if the company grows faster, then the payout happens sooner for the employee. If the company grows slowly, then the payout happens at a stretched longer period.
So the measurement of what is fast and slow growth would be basis a certain benchmark that has been set in advance, that, when company hits revenue, let's say $1 million a month, and then $5 million a month, how do you measure that what is fast and slow here?
Great question. So what we do is we take the company's projections or estimates first. The platform takes that as input, right? Okay. And basis that, suppose the period of payout of wealth points for 1 year of employment, if the period of payout is 3 years, for example, right?
Yep.
And because it's, by the way, for 1 year of employment, the wealth points are being paid out over 3 years. Therefore, the employee is given a prefixed upside, anywhere between 2x to 10x, for example, right? So for 1 rupee, so each wealth point is equivalent to 1 rupee, first of all. Okay. It's like a promise to pay 1 rupee in the future from the future cash flows. Also, if the employee was deserving to get 1 rupee right now, then instead of that, the company is giving them 2 wealth points or 10 wealth points or somewhere in between, 2x to 10x, right? So
which
that
is most suitable
upside
when I'm taking, let's say, a hit on my CTC. Let's say if my last job paid me 30 lakhs and this time I'm taking 20 lakhs. So this 10 lakhs has somehow to be converted into 20 lakhs worth of wealth points equivalent. Exactly.
And that multiple is also a function of the growth projections of the company and their financial history, right? Fast growth companies can give a 10x multiple or a 5x multiple. Slow growth companies can give only a 2x multiple, for example.
Got it.
Right? And also fast growth companies need to give a great multiple to be able to attract and retain and motivate the right talent to make that growth happen and to support that growth.
Wow. Okay.
Right? So that works well, right? So now, So the employee, gets that multiple of wealth points in their pay package. So the pay package now, in the example you gave, 30 lakh, 20 lakh, for the remaining 10 lakh, suppose the company gave a 3x multiple of 30 lakh. So now the pay package is 20 lakh plus 30 lakh, 50 lakh for 1 year of employment. But the company's outgo in 1 year is only 20 lakh. So it's capital efficient for the company right now. And company can use that capital, the saved capital, to actually deploy it towards their growth levers.
So it's like a debt that an employee is kind of lending to credit that an employee is lending to the company. Nothing.
You can say that. You can say that when the employee is taking a pay cut from the market salary, right?
Yeah.
But of course, it's not a debt in terms of fixed period of payout.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's not a debt in terms of the employee putting money from his bank account to the company's bank, right?
So it's a different investment asset class in that sense that the employee puts within the employees. This is let's call it the faith asset class, right?
Yes, we call it sweat. So very similar to sweat equity.
Yeah.
Right. That if my market worth was 30 lakh, I'm taking 20 lakh in cash and another 10 lakh in equity. But equity is too high risk.
But that difference is more of faith than it's sweat. Sweat is still that 30 lakh equivalent. So I'm just saying that for simpler ways. But I understand because sweat is more understandable a term. It's sweat equity is the popular term there. But it's basically a faith capital that the employee is investing on a certain structure of return that they're expecting, basis company's performance and basis the individual performance. You're basically correlating these two into a model. Is this
absolutely
now just to simplify this, let's take one or two examples, right? I have two examples in mind because these are very contrasting. One is a sales guy. Essentially, now they can within sales also they can be hierarchy. You can free to pick, let's say, a sales executive, or a sales manager. And the second is let's say an Android developer, right? Okay. So I'm taking these two examples, especially because the sales guy is very directly related to revenue, and the Android guy, his contribution is hard to measure in terms of revenue or impact. It's slightly harder. Then it is not as objective as exactly how much dollar value.
Yes.
Right. So how would Venex come in? And let's take certain actual examples of company A, company B, and let's say structures. How would the structure look like for these two people? And let's say they're roughly at the same level in their hierarchy.
Got it. Perfect. Great examples, Nivedan. So this will bring out the best in what we're doing actually. So great question actually. So let's take the sales example first, right? Now, in the case of the sales executive, let me tell you the problem that is there in the current business model, the current compensation model from both the perspectives, the employee, the sales executive's perspective. Let's call him Rahul. So from Rahul's perspective and from his company's perspective, right? So the problem from Rahul's perspective is that he gets bonuses and commissions based on the business he or she brings in. Mm-hmm. But he's not only bringing in that business that he or she is bringing in is helping create the future of the company.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't partake in the success of the future of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Equity is one solution to that, but equity is not the best solution as we discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the problem from his perspective. It's not ownership of the overall business and the overall future of the company, which he's contributing to creating.
Correct.
The employer's perspective is that they don't want the salesperson to do transactional sales only. The salesperson carries the brand of the company, right? The founder wants that the salesperson should think and act and speak like the founder, or speak the brand, right?
Yeah.
And not be very transactional,
mm-hmm.
right? Of course, the revenue target is there,
mm-hmm.
but that behavior that is expected from the salesperson cannot be driven with transactional bonuses.
Yeah.
So that's the dichotomy now for the sales.
So let's say Rahul, the sales guy, his target is 10 lakh rupees for this month, right? And if Rahul hits the target, he gets an additional bonus of 10,000 rupees. That's it.
Okay.
Right. Now this is a typical model, just to oversimplify it, not making it complex over a longer term. You would suggest that on top of this bonus or reward of 10,000 rupees for hitting the target, should Rahul get additional wealth points along with it, or maybe you would want to cut down on the bonus and replace it with some extra wealth points?
So we don't recommend cutting down on the current structure. Okay. So if the current structure is this, then at the next, so one is additional rewards, additional wealth points, but essentially at the next pay hike cycle, when his fixed and variable pay are going to, let's say, get an increase, and let's say the benchmark pay hike the employee, the company decides based on market is suppose 30%, okay, and based on performance of that individual. So rather than giving a full 30% pay hike on fixed and variable pay, the company can choose. The 30% is an internal decision. The employee still doesn't know about it, right? The company can choose to give maybe 15% in fixed and variable components as pay hike, and for the remaining 15%, give 3x of that, which is 45% in the form of wealth points. So the pay package now looks like fixed cash, variable cash, fixed wealth points, and variable wealth points. Okay? So if the performance is achieved next year as well, then the target is achieved, then the company will give, in addition to the fixed, the variable cash, which is the 10,000 equivalent that you mentioned, right? Or a hike on that, which is, let's say now about $12,000 rupees, right? Or dollars. In addition to that variable cash, the employee gets variable wealth points also, which make him an owner in revenue of the company, in the future revenue of the company for a limited period, right? And help them create more wealth, because this is instead of 15% notional pay cut that he took, because the HR planned the pay package like that. Because of that, he or she is getting, Rahul in this case is getting 30% more, or 45% more.
Got it. And
essentially, pay hikes is a great time to do this.
And Rahul would be able to kind of redeem or cash out these wealth points at a certain date and condition that the company has set in that contract in a way. Even if that person, even if Rahul leaves the company after the end of second year, he would continue to receive the benefits of his work for the next 2-3 years. Is typically, you're saying, would be the duration for a wealth point, right?
Yeah. So how the wealth points are redeemed is as a specific percentage of revenue or profit or funding. So Venex is a configurable platform. The company can configure any combination of revenue share, profit share, or funding share based on its business goals that it wants to, right? So let's, for simplicity, say it's revenue share, that the company is driving a share of, is giving a revenue share to the employee. So the platform recommends a particular revenue share based on all the inputs like financial projections and the payroll package data and the bonus data. It recommended, let's say, a revenue share percentage of 0.1% for this employee. So every month, he or she is accumulating fixed wealth points, which are vested on a monthly basis. At the end of the performance period, be it quarter or year, Rahul gets the variable wealth points based on performance achievement, right? And he's receiving 0.1% of revenue from that wealth point balance as royalty. And that is on a monthly basis. Okay. So every month, because that improves trust and gamification in the system, and helps the company if these payouts are made on a monthly basis based on actual revenue in the previous month of the entire company, right? So the individual wealth points are based on individual revenue that Rahul brought.
Understood.
But the payout or royalty from those wealth points is based on the company's revenue.
Got it.
So it's auto-elastic in terms of the period of payout. So let's say if he worked only for 1 year and then left the company, he or she, if the company meets their projections, may receive all the wealth points in INR form finally as cash within perhaps 3 years. But if the company grew faster than that, their initial projections, then he may receive it in 2 years, and if it's slower, then maybe 4 years. So now he or she knows that if I stay longer with the company and make the company grow faster, then I will receive my wealth sooner. And also I will accumulate more wealth points by staying with the company longer. So that's natural retention that it can promote or inspire.
Got it. And I think that makes a lot of sense for companies who are generating good revenues, good cash flows, but may not have the possibility of liquidating any ESOPs, which is typically the case that ESOPs, I mean, people keep waiting for their ESOPs to be liquidated, and it's too long-term a bet for a lot of people to feel comfortable and familiar. This feels more tangible and more short-term and more cashy in that sense, right?
Yes.
That makes perfect sense. And now that you've explained this one, I'm assuming that a similar case of, let's say, of the Android developer guy that we spoke about. Let's say there's a girl by the name Richa, right? And so Richa is an Android developer. Now, just if I were to kind of speculate, what would Venex do in this case would be to align wealth points with the time spent, of course, but there's a variable pay of performance. And this performance would be determined by whatever company's internal rules are, typically, which involves the manager or the peers, right? I assume 360 degree reviews are becoming more popular, and whatever other versions of reviews are there. Would you align your Venex wealth points with the company's evaluation of how well this person has performed?
Absolutely. So what we do is we don't take performance data from the company.
Okay.
Based on that performance data, the company gives us a deserved bonus in cash or deserved a benchmark pay hike. Right? And that enables the platform to automatically determine that, okay, let's give a part of that pay hike or part of that variable bonus in cash, and the remaining bonus or the remaining pay hike as a multiple in the form of wealth points.
Got it.
So the only inputs, for simplicity for the company's implementation, the only inputs that the Venex platform takes is A, the financial history and financial projections of the company, and B, the employee-wise payroll data, bonus data, and the benchmark bonuses and benchmark pay hikes.
Got it. Understood. So thanks a lot.
And some configurations, whether it's revenue share or profit share or whatever it is. And secondly, whether the company wants to give 50% of pay hike in the form of wealth points or 30% of pay hike in the form of wealth points and stuff like that.
Understood. Does this also mean that you would look at potentially managing the entire payroll as well, or that is going to be completely independent?
So payroll processing we don't do.
Right.
The platform provides all the necessary inputs to the payroll processing engine of the company, right? But yes, in terms of payroll management, yes, payroll strategic advisory about payroll, is perhaps a de facto part of our job. So we act as, you can say, especially for early stage ventures, apart from the SaaS platform that they get access to, they also get access to our strategic advisory on managing payroll for hiring, retaining, and motivating great talent.
Understood. Wonderful. And I would like to know, like, how has the reception been so far for this? What is the feedback that you've heard while talking to people about this, and different founders especially?
So I think, we've now spoken to hundreds of founders, a few investors for their portfolio ventures, and a lot of employees as well, to take their perspectives apart from our own experiences in our journeys. So what everybody tells us is that there is definitely a problem, and this solution is a great solution to that problem, right? We've received, it's a unique solution. I would still not say great solution, because, it has to build credibility by creating a few good case studies.
Yes.
So we are on that job right now, right?
Yes.
We have just released one case study so far. And that's a great case study, and Miss Call Pay, it's there on our website. But yeah, we need to do more case studies, more types of ventures for it to kind of realize the potential of changing the landscape.
So do we have any global examples and case studies of some companies who implemented for themselves something similar to this for their employees, and they have seen a significant jump in their performance and retention?
No, so I mean, nothing that we have come across. We try to find this,
Okay.
In terms of royalty as a structure, because it's extremely tough actually, unless it is structured. And we were fortunate to figure out a simple insight of wealth points and a simple solution to it, right? But without that insight, it's extremely difficult to structure royalties. We've not been able to figure out at scale. As I said, in bits and pieces, it does happen, especially let's say in R&D setups, where there is some research and royalty paid for output from that research, right? But even that is not happening at scale within the R&D industry. And that also a great target segment is, can R&D industry, I mean, where or companies which invest a lot into R&D and the result is going to be after 5 years, 7 years, right? How can they reward the team that is working on that R&D depending upon their individual performance right now, even if they've left the company after, let's say, 3 years of doing some basic research, which resulted into finally financial success.
Yeah, so I get it. It's like a patent royalty licensing fee equivalent models, but they are more organized and split for the context of a individual member employee there. Makes sense. Yeah, that's actually a great use case. All the places where essentially results are to be seen over a longer term, and hence retention, or not maybe hence, but retention is also key. So maintaining performance and retention both simultaneously, wherever that is a core challenge in whatever department's roles, is where I think someone would find Venex to be most valuable amongst others, right?
Absolutely. And that's why high growth ventures, right? Because in the early stages, the first 5 years, 7 years of the journey, it's just about building the framework for that future, huge, immense success in the future, right? So, so therefore, high growth ventures is a great target segment, in addition to, of course, R&D organizations. Yeah.
Got it. I think that, yes, that covers a lot about all the things that you do at Venex. And we've taken a deep look at, the workings of how this model works and what is the potential upside for all the people here. So Avi, I want to know next, since you have a specialization now in solving problems for businesses around building compensation models, help me understand as a business owner, why do I have to think so much about compensation models in the first place? What should be my outlook towards it?
Okay. All right. So, well, I mean, any business is about, people resources and capital resources. I mean, there are two key pillars to building any business, right? And scaling any business. And those two pillars are the team, the people pillar, and the financial management, the capital pillar, be it capital raise or financial efficiency, capital efficiency, right? For bootstrap ventures as well as funded ventures, right? As well as large businesses, listed companies. You take any business, any for-profit business, and if you ask me, two pillars, right, that are extremely important, strategically important for that business are the people pillar and the business pillar. And if you ask the CEO or the founder, these are the two pillars that he or she would be focusing most of their time on, right? Apart from the tinkering that happens in the 0 to 1 stage, where product is where he or she would be focusing his time, right? But and the further innovations, etc., that continue to need to happen. But the most strategic areas where he or she spends their time on in the scale journey is the people pillar and the capital pillar. And our insight is that, my insight here is that the compensation models are important because that's where both these pillars intersect. So any cracks in the people pillar or capital pillar can be the reason for the venture's failure, or venture, be it running out of capital runway on the capital side, or not being capital efficient and therefore not being profitable, for a bootstrap venture, and on the people pillar, not being able to hire retain or motivate right talent, build ownership in them, so that people rally behind that particular leadership and that particular vision. So those cracks can lead to failure of the business as well as or not being able to achieve the full extent of success, right? Full potential of that particular innovation or that particular vision, right? And compensation models intersect, or that's where both the pillars intersect. What I mean by that is that compensation models impact both the pillars.
Yeah.
Significantly. So for the people pillar, compensation models is of course not the only sub pillar, I would say. There is culture, there is the role in decision making, the vision of the company, how well the founders communicate that vision or the business leaders communicate that vision. All of those factors play a huge role, right? But the second sub pillar to people is compensation models. How rewarded they feel. So it impacts what kind of talent joins us in our business. It impacts what ownership they feel in the business, how rewarded they feel in the business or from the business success. Whether we have skin in the game or not, whether they have skin in the game or not, and stuff like that. So all those factors of compensation models, of the people pillar are impacted by the compensation models. So number one. On the capital side, similarly, compensation models determine, for funded ventures, it determines the burn rate, right? The capital burn rate. So that determines their capital runway, and the venture has to figure out a way to grow to the next orbit of growth before they run out of that capital runway. Start flying before the capital runway is over, right? Much like a plane needs to take a flight before the runway is over. And raise the next round of capital if they're not profitable by then, which essentially is the case for high growth ventures which are capturing large market, is that they need to raise 3-4 rounds of capital, perhaps or more, before they are able to become profitable, right? So if they are not able to raise the next round before the runway is over, that can lead to venture being shut down, or it can lead to having to bring wrong investors because you're desperate for capital, and all those can lead to again either failure of the business or not achieving the full extent of full potential of that particular business, right? So compensation models can determine the runway, the burn rate. They can determine they do determine the capital efficiency for profitable businesses also. And compensation models are not, by the way, limited to employees. Compensation models include payroll, which is employees, channel commissions, because channel partners are also part of the organization.
Yeah.
Right. And they need to be compensated. Vendors, service providers, advisors, mentors, all of them put together, are the compensation models, how their relationships are structured, determine the capital efficiency of the venture and on one side, and and their motivation, their ownership on the other hand. Right? So therefore, compensation models are extremely key and extremely important for any business leader, be it a small business or a large business.
Got it. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. As you've simplified by saying there's a people pillar and there's a finance pillar, and this is the place where they kind of find a bridge. And it's important to make sure that you're doing it right. Now, for someone who's trying to set up a compensation model for different departments, different roles in their company across hierarchies, is there some sort of a resource or a particular structured way of making my own mental models, learning the best practices in the industry, ideally my own industry, whether it be technology or any other? Is there any resource you can recommend, maybe right now or maybe after the call, which I would love to share with people once they're here, that can sum up their kind of give them a crash course on if they wanted to think about planning their entire compensation model, where do they go?
All right. Okay. Let me share this after the call with you.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'll just put that link in once you've shared, because I think that will be very much needed for people who want to go in depth.
Got it.
Cool, perfect. So thank you so much. We've spoken about this piece where we wanted to understand in depth why do I need to care so much about compensation model, and why it should not occur as an afterthought when some things have already gone wrong. It's something that any business owner needs to pick up more proactively. And the fact that you're bringing attention to such a key element, I think it's a very necessary, also a service in this ecosystem, right? So with this, I think we can enter our last segment of this podcast. I wanted to pick your brains on a couple of things here, right?
Sure.
So one is, which trend do you think is going to matter a lot, which is going to shape our future in the next decade, and why?
Okay, I think I would pick the trend that that people, with the advent of remote and distributed workforces, right?
Yeah.
And with the advent of technology having empowered young kids, college-going kids, school-going kids, all have access to WhatsApp and social media, right?
Yeah.
Information through the search engines. Because of the advent of information and technology and remote distributed workforces, right? Everybody has ample opportunity, right? It's based on everybody's potential, interest, motivation that they can capture. Sky is the limit for a young person today, right? So if you look at the world 10, 20 years from now, right, or maybe even 5 years from now, this empowerment, this freedom, right, will enable them to break free from the from the dependence on, you can say, salaries. Okay. YouTube freelancers, are happening. There's so many people who've been able to create wealth by doing content, for example, right?
Yeah.
Empowering platforms like YouTube and others, right?
Yeah.
And that's awesome, right? I mean, they're no more dependent on, if you look at when we graduated, right? It used to be, okay, get educated, take a job, and then stay in the job industry forever, right? There didn't used to be too many options, except for business families, right? But but now look at the kind of options that are there, the opportunities that are there. So if the world, and if you look at even beyond those past 10, 20 years, beyond the past 30 years, if you look at even 100 years before, it used to be slavery, right? Maybe. So
we've come a long way from slavery being a common practice to freedom, to, in fact, I think I personally, if someone were to ask me this question, I would have probably answered the same thing, that I think the combination of widespread access to technology with internet, of course, and the work from home new phenomenon, both of these combined are going to create a newfound world, completely new world, where people are yet going to discover new ways of what freedom means to them.
Absolutely. And that's awesome. At the same time, it's a business challenge, right? to align people now to your business goals and keep them motivated when they're working from home, to ensure that they remain committed to your venture and not go out and do offer shopping, etc. Right? So I think this whole need is becoming very, very high for something like Venex also, but that's the mega trend that we are kind of banking on.
Yeah, and just to bring balance to this perspective, right? On one hand, for example, hiring a developer is becoming more expensive. For instance, this is a problem that is plaguing the entire startup ecosystem right now. Too much VC capital flowing in, right? So hiring a developer has become very difficult. Retaining them has become very difficult. But at the same time, there is a massive rise in the no-code industry for that instance.
Yeah.
So you see, these are counter forces acting here. That I've used no code, and I know a bunch of people who are getting deeper into no code, and there is a full on it's right now coming out from the underground because of the new tools that have come up which are performing really well. So it's going to be called a maker economy, which is beautiful because now there can be 1 person, 2 person companies. A lot of them, there's a category called micro SaaS, right? These things are coming up, which is exactly the counter to expensive labor versus cheap access to tools and resources which can accomplish the same things. So I'm sure we can find more examples if we start looking for it. But yes, I think there is a newfound freedom, and I can see that across my peers as well, that everyone's thinking hard right now of how they want to spend their time, in what ways, and what does money mean to them, including me for that instance. I have questioned this hard. What does money mean to me, and what am I really going to do with it, right? Then I said, okay, for that I need to know what do I care about. So I went on a journey of, okay, how much importance do I give to money versus how much importance do I give to my own personal growth and things which matter to me, even if they don't yield money. And this, for example, this podcast is one of those initiatives. And I see many other people being experimental and more open-minded with their approach. And the term failure doesn't scare us anymore.
Yes.
Why?
Absolutely.
Because we think we always have choices.
Yep.
So it's a very new world to have so much choice. And it can be daunting, honestly. To be growing up in this world, it can be daunting because at every point you're questioning whether was this the best choice.
Absolutely. Especially for those of us who are not as young as, let's say college going kids, it's a big challenge to keep up with them, right? With all the choice they have and all the choice we also
it's
have.
It's been 8 years that I've been out of college, and when I look at people who've just freshly graduated, I've started envying them. So I can understand that for you. I mean, what you've been to, you're a graduate of 99? 97.
Almost 25 years.
25 years, right? So I can imagine that if 8 years feels like a big difference to me, 25 years must feel like a completely different planet to you at times in certain spaces.
Absolutely. But at the same time, I mean, thankfully, fortunately, I've been part of the startup ecosystems, right? So
yes.
That has kept me young and relevant, hopefully.
No. It's less about being relevant. I think you're actually at the best position in some ways to capitalize on all the things you've found so far, which is a strength to have. Even though you may not be a part of the very new culture and that's not your life, but you're ready to make different opportunities, create different opportunities for them. Which is where the opportunity, to me, I think that's where it lies. And I feel like now that I understand there is change happening, I'm also constantly thinking, how do I capitalize on that change? So that is a very, very different entrepreneurial mindset that you're thinking of than to say that I wish I had more choice then. That's a very different
thing. You're right. You're right. I mean, see, I think one thing from design thinking philosophy that I have taken away is the empathy aspect of it, right? I mean, as long as I think we focus on, we understand that and live that, I think we are all going to be relevant as long as we can empathize with our customers.
Correct. The ability of empathy and creativity combined can yield magical results. So I think that's it. Cool. So with this, there's another question that I had. I wanted to know about one particular thing in your life or in your career, like in wherever, which you have been very proud of accomplishing, and tell me about that time.
Okay, I think if I have to pick one instance, perhaps that the one that comes to the top of my mind is what what I was able to achieve at Echo India Financial Services, the tech venture. So Echo per se, Echo itself, first of all, actually, is a very unique venture. It pioneered, mobile wallets in India, but not for the connected or tech savvy users like us, right? But for the bottom of the pyramid, it's trying to solve the problem of financial inclusion. And it ended up using the mobile phone, for solving that problem, because that user only has access to the mobile phone, right? And it ended up creating, Echo ended up creating an industry called domestic remittance, within India, and also similar industries in other countries, which have actually studied the Echo model and implemented in their own countries, and all that has happened.
Wow.
Harvard case study and various countries visiting and doing case studies, etc. on the Echo model. So Echo did a lot of pioneering work in that space of financial inclusion, and I was fortunate to be part of Echo in their mid-growth journey from 2011 to 2016. And I think the biggest achievement I would say there was in the first 2 years of my role at Echo, being able to take the business from 2 states to 7 states in India, and almost pan India because of that, while in a capital efficient manner, while right sizing the team. By right sizing, I mean that we didn't used to, because of efficiency reasons and cash flow issues, we didn't used to actually have the luxury to replace somebody who used to resign. So we had to build models and partnership models with our distributors in a way, and with our people in a way that it used to be, capital efficiency was a design constraint, right? So, but we were able to do that in those 2 years, take the business from 2 states to 7 states in India while right sizing the team.
Amazing. Yeah, it must have been a very difficult kind of a challenge for sure, I can imagine. But now that you've mentioned that there is other companies from across the world have taken the Echo model, I'm going to study a bit further. I haven't had the opportunity to understand Echo very well. So thank you for that. I think I'm going to check this out now. I've been a part of one of the financial inclusion startups before, where we were also building some technologies, NFC-based technologies for the bottom of the pyramid quite a lot. We'll probably talk about that separately, but that's something that has been close to me personally in some ways, because I was very into building that business as one of the first people who joined it. So
right. And even Meesho is a financial inclusion venture.
Oh, absolutely. I think right now India's biggest NGO has been Meesho in some ways.
Yes.
When I say an NGO, not in terms of non-profit, but in terms of the social impact that it has had.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so much that I've personally interacted with a lot of resellers. These are women, middle class and lower middle class demographic background. And they've had beautiful stories of how using Meesho literally changed their lives. They found meaning, they found respect from their family. And that to me I felt like I was on a mission. When I was working at Meesho, I didn't feel like I had a job. I honestly didn't. And nobody needed to tell me I needed to have an owner mindset, because I was like, this is what I'm living for. This is the mission. And to see these women's lives being changed and them sharing stories with you personally. I've been that guy who I went to their home, had tea with them, and them literally crying, telling how lives have changed for good for them. So I can understand that, and so much so that I personally believe that only capitalism can kind of really scale any social models as well. There is
I totally agree.
Philanthropy that can compete with that.
Absolutely. I mean, you're definitely stealing my words here.
Is it?
We both have that common experience of financial inclusion.
Yeah.
And I think, something attracted us to those ventures, right? Meesho and
right? Yeah. And in some ways, so financial empowerment cuts through a lot of social evils if done right, automatically.
Absolutely.
Not all, of course.
Absolutely.
And yeah, people sometimes tend to forget that, and I almost feel like I'm being too right winger on this, but I believe on the positive power of capitalism a lot, that you rightly align the incentives of everyone, and when magic happens.
Completely with you. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, and so this is the last question for the day. We've spoken about one of your proud accomplishments. I also want to share a time when it was tough for you, and you probably had to deal with a very difficult thing, a failure, something of that sort, which I would love if you could share with us today here.
All right. I think that would be Route Guru, right? That was my first venture.
Okay.
And I invested along with my co-founders and team. We invested 3.5 years in that business, right? And we were one of the most admired startups of that time.
Wow.
But the dichotomy was that we were not revenue generating. Okay, so what was admired was our creativity and innovation on the product side, and we used to receive, and it was the world's first such product. I mean, what we built was a landmark-based driving direction system, okay, and a landmark-based navigation system, because the Western technologies, which were based on street names and exit numbers, didn't used to work in India.
Correct.
And we used to face the same challenge as users. And then we said, okay, let's solve that and let's use landmarks, which is what we use in communicating directions to each other, right? So why can't technology communicate in the same way, right? So, and we solved that problem. So I think we were appreciated for solving that problem. But the biggest learning there was that we started solving that problem first before we started understanding from customers the value and whether they will pay for it, be it consumers or businesses. We failed.
So you were planning to kind of charge consumers for availing this new location service, GPS service.
So the biggest problem was that we had no plans of monetizing. We had not thought about monetization, right? As a techie problem solver, right? We just ended up solving this problem, right? And we ended up doing that, thinking that we'll be able to, then monetize it and raise tons of capital, etc. Right? So we attempted charging the consumer, we attempted charging the businesses, big businesses, small businesses. Nothing worked in that window of opportunity that we had, and we ran out of capital runway, and we ran out of steam. And competition came in, GPS came, technologies changed, GPS came in the mobile handset. So we lost that window of opportunity. Oh, right.
Wait, what year is this?
Oh, so this was 2006 to 2010.
Oh
before,
God, okay.
GPS on the smartphone, and before when we had the Nokia phones and the Symbian phones.
Now I got it. Very different time to be at that time. No wonder. I mean, that must have been a tough time in that sense, because on one hand it's already a difficult model, and on the other hand, mobile phones started coming with GPS. That must have been a heavy blow in that sense back then.
Absolutely. And so the biggest learning was to actually start with customers and don't fully take them for their word. Read between the lines, perhaps, because customers also perhaps don't know what they want. But to empathize with them and to think about them and the value creation for them first, and talking to them first before creating the product was the key learning, I guess, which is what we applied at Venex.
Yeah, amazing. Good to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing that piece too. So with that, I think we're coming to a close to our podcast. And I think this is a very new field for me to kind of get into the depth of how compensation works and when it doesn't work, and why someone needs to pay attention, and all the things you've shared from your journey as well. Thank you so much for sharing all of those so candidly, Avinash. I really appreciate that.
Thanks a ton, Nivedan. Not only thanks for having me on the podcast, but it has been such a pleasure talking to you. And wish you all the best in this and anything that you do. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Avi. I really appreciate this again. And for all the people watching, thank you for watching this podcast again. This is Coffee and Stardust, and I'm Nivedan, your host here.